So a very good morning to everyone who have joined us. Today we have with us a presentation on a very interesting topic on carbon and blockchain. It's going to be presented by Mr. Kishore Mahamunkar. He's a project director at Carbon Blockchain and also a visiting faculty with IICSR. Thank you for joining, Kishore. We are all super excited to learn about technology and how it's changing the domain and carbon markets. And over to you.
Great, appreciate. Thank you so much, Harsha. It's customary for me to introduce IICSR apart from what you did, introduce me. You're always humble, but I have to say this, IICSR, one of the pioneering institute in India, for last 10 years is doing some commendable work in sustainability field, doing a lot of programs related to sustainability, ESG, CSR, carbon GHG accounting, LCA, lifecycle, accounting, assessment, and of course now with carbon blockchain and taking the movement further into the future. So my compliments to Harsha and the team. They're doing some wonderful job, and hope they continue to do that in coming years and make a greater impact in the future. So welcome to you all, friends, on a Sunday morning. It's great to see you all here, taking time out on a holiday. So this program is primarily a kind of introduction to carbon blockchain, which essentially rides upon the carbon credit, carbon markets as a fundamental underlying practice. So it essentially is not carbon credit subject, so to say. It's more on technology coming into picture, given the current scenario, given the carbon market, carbon credits, and how technology can bring about a different dimension, required change, and how we as an individual, whether you are sustainability practitioners, aspiring to be one, ESG department head, organizations, maybe technology, technocrats, and how possibly there is a role for each one of us in this journey. So that's what the next 1 hour we're going to discuss. We're going to talk about. So it's not really carbon credits as a subject, which well talked about. A lot of discussions already happened. A lot of waters are already passed under the bridge. So we don't want to talk more about that. We're going to talk about carbon blockchain. And as a subject on the screen, carbon blockchain and credibility, turning climate action into verified impact. So to begin with, we have about 20 odd people just to tickle our brains and on a Sunday morning. I'm going to show you, put a quiz in front of you, for which you'll have to help me by opening up your Chrome browser on your mobile phones and getting on to something called as www.menti.com. That's menti.com. So if I may request the participants to log into the web browser menti.com, and I'll publish my set of questions so that we just understand how well do we understand the subject. So here goes my screen on menti.com. Just give me a minute. Yes, so those who have already logged in, well and good. But if you can see on the screen, it says www.menti.com and use the code 1993293. So my request to the participants, just log into menti.com and put the code 1993293. And let's have a quick quiz to test our knowledge and for me to understand how much you understand. Fantastic. So we have first response already, as you can see on the screen. So out of the 4 options, to measure air quality, to reduce business tax, to finance verified emission reductions, to track renewable energy only. And out of the 7, 8 people who are logged into the menti.com to have answered it to be number C, which is to finance verified emission, which is good. Do we wait for the others to log in and answer, or do we move to the next question? Okay, so 3 out of 3, that's the correct answer. Let me go to the next question. And coming up on your screen now is the next set of questions. What does one carbon credit typically represent? Is it 100 kilowatt hour of clean energy? Is it 1 hectare of forest? Is it 1 ton of CO2 equivalent reduced or removed? And D is $10 in carbon tax. So what does one carbon credit typically represent? And out of the 8 people who already joined on menti.com, 3 have answered it to be number C. And very interestingly, someone has also answered D, which is $10 in carbon tax. One carbon credit typically represents answer C, that is 1 ton of CO2 equivalent reduced or removed, right? So unanimously, we understand that somebody who's answered D, yes, there could be monetary value attached to it, to a carbon credit, but it cannot be $10. It is dynamic, depending upon the geography, depending upon the market and the kind of projects. But the most appropriate answer in this case is C, that is 1 ton of CO2 equivalent reduced or removed. Fantastic to see. Yeah, and on the outset, there's someone who also answered A, that is 100 kilowatt hour of clean energy. It could be measure of that, but it certainly doesn't represent the CO2 equivalent measure, right? So answer C is the most appropriate in this context. Coming up on your screen is the next part of the quiz, which is which of the following is part of the carbon credit life cycle? Which of the following is a part of the carbon credit life cycle? Is it budget allocation? You can guess it. It could be guesstimate. You can put an intelligent guess. It doesn't matter. There's no wrong or right, or there's no. Yep, somebody already answered. So the question, which of the following is part of the carbon credit life cycle? Is it budget allocation? Is it project design and third party? Um, is it blockchain mining? Is it ESG rating assignment? That is environmental social governance. So I think we have a mixed reaction. People have a divided opinion. Um, Carbon credit cycle includes project design. Yes. It includes blockchain. Somebody has answered that. It includes ESG rating assignment. Yes and no, but most appropriate answer in this context would be project design and third-party verification. Why? We will look at it, but budget allocation is an exercise in any project. It doesn't matter, be it your new greenfield project or be it a carbon mitigation project. Doesn't matter. Why answer B is most appropriate? Because it involves initiation of the project, declaration of the project, involvement of the third-party assessor. Uh, the carbon credit project lifecycle need not necessarily include blockchain mining. It may not, but it's not it doesn't go as per the template prescribed by the various experts or the governing bodies. And number D, which is ESG rating assignments, not necessary. Yeah, so the carbon credit life cycle as a project may cut across, initiatives such as ESG. It may even give birth to the CSR. It may even cuts into, scope 1, scope 2 emission calculation. It may even get into life cycle assessment of a product. You may have a variant of the product, and thereby you may look at, reduction of energy, improving the processes, the internal, the input material, the alternatives of it, so many things. But by and large, the most appropriate answer in the context would be number B, which is project design and third-party verification. Okay. Here's the next question. I think the mentees. Okay. Now, this is something which is, those who are following the carbon credit industry, the developments closely, possibly would be able to answer, but there's no harm in making a wild guess. So, what was the core issue in the Vera Red Plus scandal, if anyone has heard that? If not, then possibly you can look at the options and try to make a guess. The issue with the Vera Red Plus scandal, is it a fraudulent tree planting? Is it overestimation of avoided carbon? Is it no blockchain used? Is it the government intervention? What was the real issue of that scandal? I mean, you can just make a wild guess. It doesn't matter.
Rather like a saying, but it says in the
Yeah, so out of the 10 people who are logged into menti.com with the code 199329883, 8 have answered, and 2 have answered it to be number A, which is fraudulent tree planting. Yes and no. There were some inflated numbers on the amount of tree and the amount of carbon that got mitigated. But by and large, the acceptable answer in this case is overestimation of avoided carbon. So that's a good guess by 6 of the people, majority of the people who are logged into menti.com. So, which is very, very gladdening to see. Here comes the next question. So, okay. So you can make a guess here. What role does blockchain play in carbon markets? First of all, is it there? To my knowledge, it's beginning to be there, although it has its own set of tops and topsy-turvy journey on and off. But you can make a guess. What role does blockchain play in carbon markets? Is it number A, deforestation modeling? Is it B, emission calculations? C, immutable tracking and transparency? Or is it D, tree growth acceleration? So what role does blockchain play in the market? Carbon markets. So out of the 10 people, 7 have already answered, and 2 have answered it to be emission calculation. Well, yes, it can, but the most appropriate answer, as answered by 5 people, is immutable tracking and transparency. That's one of the biggest benefit that carbon blockchain can bring into the carbon credit markets. And good to see that majority of the people, either it's intellectual guys who understand the subject nitty-gritties, have answered it correctly to be number C, which is immutable tracking and transparency. That's good. And quickly, 2 questions, and then we'll get back to our discussion. Okay, now this is one more challenging question to your knowledge. It goes like, which of the following is considered beyond value chain mitigation, BVCM? If you would have heard this term, what is BVCM? Is it A, installing solar panels? Is it B, buying carbon credits? Is it C, reducing logistics fuel? Or is it D, electrifying internal fleet? What is that? Can you make an intelligent guess? Okay, so it says installing solar panels on company headquarters. Okay. Now someone says buying carbon credits from the market. Okay. No one has answered reducing logistical fuel consumption, and no one has so far answered electrifying internal fleets. Okay, as the question and the clue suggests, it's beyond organizational boundaries. Okay, value chain mitigation. So anything that is outside the organizational boundary is something falls under BVCM category. So installing solar panel on company headquarters, is it beyond the company's boundary? No, it is not. Number C, which is reducing logistical fuel consumption. Yes and no, but scope 2, scope 3, if you look at that, yes, it is beyond the the company's organizational boundary, could be a right answer. But by and large, one would answer it to be buying carbon credits because it's beyond your company's ability to offset the carbon credits by internal process improvement or by projects that help you in mitigating the emissions. But yes, answer C could be my answer, and answer B could be the second most preferred answer. So I think we have some interesting discussion here. Hope that's sticking in your brains and I think with this we will conclude our quiz session. Let's see if we have any more question. Pardon me for that. Yeah, I think that's about it. Okay, so we'll just stop there. And it was interesting to have this participation, and I will move back to the discussion. Hope my screen is visible to you. It is called Carbon Blockchain and Credibility, Turning Climate Action into Verified Impact. So if that's visible to you, let's move to the topics that we're going to discuss today, starting with life cycle of a carbon credit. Just to be on the same page, let's just touch upon the carbon credit markets and what are the fundamentals, so that all of us are on the same page. What is market and what are the markets? And then we talk about the standards, which is ISO 14068, ICVCM, VCMI, this terminology, what are they and how do they benefit us? Then we have blockchain for transparency and trust. Fundamentals, so that all of us are on the same page. Harsha, there's an echo. Then we talk about tokenizing environmental assets, some of the use cases which are prevalent and can be used for references. And lastly, impacts, its assessment and linkages to technology. So these are the broad topics that we want to cover today, beginning with, just as I said, just to be on the same page, what are carbon credits? Everybody understand that by the quiz, we know that we are on the same page. So carbon credits represent 1 ton of CO2 removed or avoided from the atmosphere, right? Achieved through projects like tree planting, renewable energy, or energy efficiency. Okay, as simple as tree planting, could be forestation, could be mangroves. It could be even extracting methane from a landfill. Renewable energy could be wind, solar, ocean current. It could be anything as long as through the nature. Energy efficiency, it could be as simple as replacing coal with naphtha or with hydrogen or any other green fuel. Uh, then the carbon credits, primarily certified by Global Standards Organization for its authenticity and its measurement of the impact. Right. So these are the basics of carbon credits. So that brings us to the what are the markets then? So there are two types of markets, and most of us would aware of it, but just to refresh our memories, compliance market and voluntary markets. So compliant market are basically regulated. For example, European Union's emission trading system, ETS, as it's known as, and with the mandatory caps for organizations. And every year it gets tightened. For example, this year if it's 100 kilo equivalent of carbon dioxide, next year it could be 98, and then you have to look at internally and how we can best mitigate your emissions, ideally through internal exercise rather than offsetting it by buying the carbon credit. So that's the compliance market. There's a lot to it. But the opposite of it, compliance market, is voluntary markets, which is companies buy credits to offset emissions and accelerate decarbonization. So something which is out of compassionate, because they want to be seen as a corporate good citizen, and they will go beyond their internal carbon offset mandates and even do projects that could be beneficial for the society, for the country as a whole, including buying some carbon credits from the markets, which encourages decarbonization. All right, so this is broadly two set of markets that we're looking at. So what's the compliance market? Let's understand a bit of it because that's more important in today's discussion. Why the compliance market? It is mandated by national or international regulations. As we discuss, ETS, and the pioneer was the United States of America, right from the carbon treaty to California cap and trade. So you have to have a cap on your emission per year, and then you can declare your carbon footprint and measure against the cap. And it forces entities like power plants, industrial sectors to stay within legally capped emissions or purchase allowances. Okay, if you cannot stay within the emissions, then you have to purchase those allowances. The compliance market also is has a regulatory body, so it brings that kind of certainty, and it gives you that kind of emission caps with the definite numbers, so you can measure your performance with by aligning with those numbers, and it operates under legally binding caps on emissions at a national or a sectoral level. So it could be sector like cement, it could be steel, it could be coal-fired power plant, and it all aligns with the NDCs, the national determined contribution or the goals, which in turn links back to the net zero targets of the countries. In our case, in India's case, it is 2070. Some of the countries have declared it that to be as early as 2040, 2050. However ambitious they could be, but it all linkages to the national determined goal and thereby the net zero targets for the countries. So the regulatory bodies, ensures the facilitation of the carbon exchange, carbon trading, and on the right, if you see on the screen, so it also regulates the carbon pricing. So its carbon price signals drive industrial decarbonization investment. So the job of the compliance market is to drive the activity for the carbon trading. Yeah. Market-based compliance mechanism. So unlike the stock markets, where there are, it's dynamic, it's flexible, it's driven by the demand supply. There is a bit more intervention by the governing bodies to reduce internal emissions. So there is something, that there's a stick and carrot approach that are mandated by the regulatory bodies to the sector or to the manufacturing organizations by allowances or offsets from approved compliance registers. And apart from the carrot, there is a punitive measure as well. So the penalties apply for non-compliances. So if there are, if you overrun your target, if you do not comply to the regulations or the mandates, obviously there will be some penalties. Yeah. And the impact of it is to drive systematic decarbonization in heavy emitting or unabated sectors. And it acts as a benchmark for voluntary markets and national carbon taxes. So that brings us to the discussion, if this is the compliance market, what are the voluntary markets? Let's have a look at it. So the voluntary carbon market, VCM, is basically, it offers a flexible, decentralized alternative to compliance markets. So it's more flexible, it's more decentralized, it's left up to the parties who are involved into that to drive it and to make it a success at the end of the day. So the companies voluntarily accelerate climate goals beyond legal obligation under the compliance markets. So here in the voluntary carbon market, the prices vary widely based on project type, geography, and co-benefits that it brings in the form of the additionalities. For instance, you can have the credit finances as additional climate project that would otherwise be economically unfeasible. So even instances there, the organization have issued climate bonds, and they managed to finance their various decarbonization activities. So that brings us to the role of financing climate solutions. It plays a very crucial role in financial climate solution, being a voluntary in nature, and it gives that kind of flexibility in the hands of various players, and it supports Sustainable Development Goal (SDG), especially for the global south. So as you would know, most of the carbon accumulated in the atmosphere in the last 100 plus years of industrial activity is primarily happened after the steam engine innovation in the West. So in the North America, in the European market, the industrialization happened from 1900s, early 1900s. So almost the estimate of the carbon accumulated in the atmosphere is to the tune of 70 to 80% has accumulated due to the industrialization which has happened in the Western world, right? So uh, uh, this voluntary market, aims to cut that kind of taboo. It also brings in the global South, which is mostly Africa, Latin America, Asia, India into the foray. and has some involvement, some participation, and the benefits to take away from the market. So what are those? We will talk about it. If the time doesn't permit, we can always connect offline. So this is what the voluntary carbon market talk about. So how does a life cycle of carbon credit look like? So it's a pretty simple life cycle, right from project design all the way till the right bottom. If you see reporting and claims, so in between there are a lot of hops and hurdles that it overcomes, right from the project design of registration. On the left, if you see a carbon reduction removal project is planned, promulgated, and it is registered with the recognized standards such as VERA, Gold Standard, and you subscribe to those various prescriptions or the standards. And then you come out with a baseline additionality assessment, which is establishing what emission would occur without the project. And if the project is being undertaken, what would it achieve? And if you can, uh, estimate that, I think you would have a better story and, ability to get your project started. You also have to prove the project adds new reductions, not business as usual, but it adds to the reduction of your, carbon footprint, carbon decarbonization journey. Then you actually implement the project, isn't that? After you finalize the project, promulgate it, you get it registered with the registry. You carry out the actual project. It could be reforestation, it could be mangroves, it could be methane capture through landfill, it could be compressed biogas, it could be anything that is going to cut down on the carbon emission. Then, of course, the renewable energy. It could be, open access. It could be large scale, solar plants, solar farms, generating energy for the grid, for the captive usage. It could be anything as long as it has the environmental and sustainability benefits. And then comes the MRV, the measurement, reporting, and monitoring part of verification part of it. First is the monitoring. So the emission reduction are measured using credible MRB protocols. There are basic techniques in terms of logging the monitoring the performance periodically in terms of the numbers, and tabulating at the end of the period, and measuring it against the reduced carbon. But that's not all. I mean, you need a third-party verification too. So the independent verifier, or the auditors, confirms that the whatever you are monitored is to the required standards as per the prescription. And if that is approved, you are issued with the verified carbon credits. So verified reduction are issued as carbon credits. One credit is 1 ton of carbon equivalent, carbon dioxide equivalent, right? So obviously with the credit, what are you going to do? With the IPO, with the shares that you're going to publish in the stock market, obviously you go and do the registry with some stock market, right? So credits are added to a public registry, and it is traceable. It has got certain folios, certain numbers, and it is transparent. It is openly tradable on the exchanges. But in our case, where we talk about infusion of technology, primarily blockchain, we could look at as one more phase, that sale or tokenization. Sold in voluntary or compliance markets may be tokenized or on blockchain. Yeah, but this you could take it out. In the traditionally, this phase will not be available or will not be there in the typical life cycle of a carbon credit. Then, in a normal course of action, the carbon credits gets retired. So it comes to the end of life, it loses its utility value. So what happens to the retirement? So a credit is retired when claimed by a company for offsetting. So use the credit. So unlike the shares or the debentures, which can be freely traded and, exchanges hands and stays there for many, many years, carbon credits and have a definite lifespan, right from the project design to genesis to its execution, and converting that into carbon credit, and then utilizing and using that for offsetting and submitting to the authorities as a part of your yearly decarbonization or audits. It gets retired and cannot be reused. Yeah, so that gets reported and as well. So like buyers, the corporation uses the credit in sustainable reporting. For instance, beyond value chain, BVCM for SBTI. Um, it could be scope 2, scope 3 reporting, and thereby the overall organization ESG reporting. That could be reported, and then the retirement of the credit also is declared there officially. and to these some of the governing bodies like SEC, Security Exchange Commission, which is for climate disclosure. So that's a typical life cycle of a carbon credit, right from the genesis, the origin of the project, converting your project into realizable gains in form of carbon credits, listing it, benefiting it through tokenization if it's possible, and then retiring at the end of the offsetting exercise, and then reporting to the governing bodies. So that's a typical life cycle. It's and the picture on the right side about 1,000 word. So that's simply for those who are new to the carbon markets. But then there are, it brings in some a certain set of challenges too. So what are the challenges in manual carbon footprint calculations? So complexity and scale. Some of the projects could go and get into several $1 million, spread over 2 years, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, could be anything. So that itself, the time and the effort that goes into any project is brings in its set of complexity and scale, large scale. Then the challenge is the data collection. Obviously, data is could be collected manually, may not be based on certain standards. It could be erroneous, and so on and so forth. So, data collection is always a challenge when it comes to a carbon decarbonization project. Then comes the accuracy and consistency. What data comes from which source, whether it is from manually calculated or through the written logs, whether it comes from various sensors, how do we tabulate that, correlate that, and harmonize the data? It could be prone to errors. And of course, if it is not automated, it could be very time consuming, labor intensive, and resource demanding, which itself means there's additional cost, which includes labor, which includes usage of computers, travel, commuting, and many other things. And manual carbon footprint calculation has its own set of limited scope, and it may overlook indirect or life cycle emissions. Yeah, because it cannot look beyond its typical site within the sphere of the project. Then the emission factors are dynamic, with the standards, the reportings. It's all dynamic, so it makes it a bit difficult for updating the numbers manually with the change in the various standards. And it's inconsistent, and it's hard to control the versions of the various data, tabulated data. Audit and verification itself is a challenge. Integrating it with the overall system and reporting itself is an issue, because it comes from the moment it is manual, it comes from several sources, needs to be audited at every step. It brings its own set of complexity, and thereby the challenges in terms of integrating it with the final object. And of course, anything that is non-driven by technology, non-digitalized, had its own challenges in terms of scalability. So these are the various issues that people are grappling with. But now that the landscape is changing, people are now looking at different avenues. But this kind of issues have brought in a lot of issues, certain issues such as greenwashing. So those who are following the carbon markets would have heard about various scams, scandals, a lot of news in the media about how carbon trading in the carbon market is non-trustworthy. It is it's prone with errors, possibly embezzlement, possibly a lot of scams and scandals. So essentially, it is termed under categorized under something called as greenwashing. So those who understand the term, greenwashing refers to the practice of conveying a false impression or misleading claims about how environmentally sound a company's products or operations are. In the context of a carbon market, it involves companies claiming carbon neutrality while relying on low quality or unverifiable carbon credits, or failing to reduce actual emissions. So essentially, it is you giving the false impression, reporting wrong numbers, or projects that are generating low quality of the carbon, and something which is unverifiable, maybe because of geographical location. So utilize that as a to your advantage and report higher carbon credits, etc., etc. So the certain challenges are using unverifiable or low quality offsets, double counting. You not only use the credit but also sell it to the external market, and who would keep a tap of that? Who will ensure that you don't do that? The third challenge is offsetting emissions instead of reducing them internally. Now, a lot of carbon offsetting exercise is done, for internal purposes, but those who do not do that, buy the credits from the market while they continue to do the emissions continue to pollute the atmosphere? So it is a bit of a misnomer. It is bit of a conundrum as to do we go on, emitting and polluting the atmosphere, or do you just buy the carbon credits and cover up your activities or acts? So this has been happening for many years now. So it is essentially mislabeling or exaggerating sustainability impact, isn't that? So that's been happening. So to overcome this various challenges, there are certain entities, there are certain initiatives, but it's worthwhile to take a quick look at so it becomes more real. As we discussed in the question and answer, the Vera Red Plus scandal, which reports 90% of the issued rainforest credits were ineffective. Then there are a few other issues in our South Pole Kariba project, double counting, countries claiming credits under NDCs while also sold on voluntary markets. How pretentious that could be, how false that could be. That one hand you're utilizing the carbon credit, claiming it, and under the NDCs you're also claiming it and offering it to the other countries or other sectors. Then there are certain issues with the fashion brands like H&M and Shein use low integrity offsets to claim carbon neutrality. But specifically, now that we have to discuss about the greenwashing, there's the scandal, and the question what we asked was what was the Vera Red Plus scandal, which has kind of stirred the market and kind of made the investors and the general public cynical about carbon markets credibility. So the scandal was about the carbon credits under Vera were found to be phantom. So that's the word they use. It's phantom means not real or fake, not representing real CO2 reductions. Baseline for deforestation risk were inflated, exaggerating emission reduction. And big brands like Shell, Gucci, Disney use these credits to claim carbon neutrality, sparking a greenwashing backlash. Saying how ridiculous this can get. Inadvertently or knowingly, it's been done by bigger organizations. So there is a lack of transparency. That's exactly that's got capitalized on. And flawed methodologies raise doubts about credit integrity. So Vera announced methodological reforms, in between, yes, saying that although they did not publicly admit that because of that's the typical nature of registries and various audit agencies. But they did undertake certain reform. So the scandal accelerated the push for digital MRV, monitoring, reporting, and verification, and blockchain-based transparency. Although it is not completely sunk into their minds, but there is a lot of pressure, a lot of initiative, and as you would know, some of the countries are adopting cryptos, blockchain as their standard currency. In the recent past, United States of America is pushing for crypto and underlying blockchain as a engine or technology. So I think there's a renewed confidence, although it's there's a bit of a cynicism in minds of people still persist. Even the governments are not very pretty clear. But going forward, there is a lot of focus on the getting the technology infusion, so bringing back the credibility to this industry and to the practice, and overcoming some of the issues which was due to, in the current scandals, such as double counting, non-additionality of phantom credits, over-crediting, lack of transparency, fraudulent registries or certified shell projects, data manipulation. This is some of the issues which is plagued to the industry. And, to solve this issue, I think there is the infusion of technology, right from, simple as sensors, Internet of Things, IoT, reporting the energy saved, the converting that into measurable carbon credits, then tokenizing it through the blockchain. There are a lot of efforts been happening. So the blockchain, as you would know, is a direct counter mechanism to ensure there is a immutability, which is once a transaction or data point is recorded on the blockchain, it cannot be altered or deleted, right? This makes it impossible to retroactively change credit ownership, project data, or retirement records because it's a verifiable ledger, as we would know. It brings in a lot of transparency, and it's a public ledger. And if you have to make one change, it has to undergo a lot of hands. So all transaction and records are visible to all participants on the network. This public shared ledger makes it difficult to conceal double counting or the true status of credits. Yeah, it cannot be concealed. So the usage of blockchain not only brings the irrefutability, immutability, but also importantly the transparency, which is what essentially is needed in today's world. And of course, decentralization. The carbon market as such is controlled by few countries because of their maybe the early more advantage or their awareness or their ability to drive the market. But it is certainly not democratized, or it is not come to the masses. It has not come in the hands of global south, apart from the global north, as we call it. So the infusion of technologies, digitization, IoT, and blockchain makes the carbon market more decentralized. No single entity controls the network. This removes the single point of failure and reduces the risk of fraudulent registry or certifiers, as verification is distributed across many nodes, right? And the traceability, of course, and every carbon credit once tokenized can be backtracked, right? The last is smart contract. It's a self-executing contracts program with predefined rules can automate the issuance, transfer, and retirement of credits based on verified data, reducing human error and malicious intervention. So, we earlier looked at the various issues with the carbon credit, the challenges that, a carbon credit as a market has, some of the frauds that has taken place, the greenwashing, and that's exactly can be overcome by the usage of technology, primarily blockchain, apart from the sensors, IoT, harmonizing the data across your business systems, which could be ERP, which could be supply chain management, it could be various other tools and technologies that our organization is using, and combining that with the technologies that I mentioned, I think it gives a solid advantage, and with the benefits such as immutability, transparency, decentralization, traceability, and smart contracts, right? So, as we mentioned, the Vera did not admit, but they said yes, there's a room for improvement. So after the 2022-23, there is a lot of efforts been put in to put certain standards in place, specifically ISO 14068, ICVCM, and VCMI. Let's understand this and how they are going to benefit or going to make a impact or a change as we move into the carbon markets in the future. So ISO 14068 on the left, if you see, it's climate change management and carbon neutrality, right? The purpose is its upcoming ISO standard defines the principles and requirements for achieving and demonstrating carbon neutrality. So it has certain principles and has a set of certain requirements. So the scope, if you look at it, it covers organizational products, services, and event level carbon neutrality claims. Yeah. And the importance, it provides a credible, harmonized global framework, ensuring consistency and rigor in carbon neutral claims, especially when blockchain or NFTs are used for verification and offsetting. So there's some work has been put into in this regard, and very soon we will see that, and there'll be a carbon urgency, as we are already destined to breach the 2-degree temperature threshold much before 2050. Even some of these experts are saying we can reach the threshold as early as 2030. And it's like a pack of cards, or rather I would not like to use the term, when the shit hits the fan, and there's this, there's a helter skelter, and there's so much of urgency. And if you're not prepared for that, and then we will be overwhelmed by the amount of gigantic effort that the world requires. So the infusion of the technology and getting prepared for the eventuality is the best way forward. So that's where some of the standards, some of the association are putting their efforts that when the hell break loose, we are ready to fight the battle. So ISO 14068 is one of the ways in which we can try to mitigate some of the forthcoming challenges. Then comes the ICVCM. It means Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market. So ICVCM develops and governs the core carbon principles, CCPs, to define high integrity carbon credits. So the scope is to evaluate and label carbon crediting programs, prescribe certain methodologies, the projects that meet stringent criteria on environmental integrity, additionality, permanence, and transparency. So the importance is ensure that the carbon credits traded, that is via NFTs, are robust, verifiable, and environmentally credible, improving trust and decentralized carbon markets, right? And ancillary to that is called VCMI, that's voluntary carbon markets integrity initiatives. The purpose is to have certain guidelines for corporate to use the voluntary carbon credits in credible climate claims. And offers a claims code for practices, and important is to ensure that corporates, buyers of NFTs and carbon credits from the CO2 pool can credibly report their carbon neutrality or net zero progress aligned with global expectation with usage of carbon a ledger which can be backtracked or can be verified. Right, just see some of the initiatives being undertaken. Hopefully they gain traction, more acceptability, and when the carbon emergency or the urgency becomes a bit too urgent, we have technology as our aid to salvage the urgency. So let's move on to the uh, just to highlight and why integrity matters in the today's world is basically, there is a lot of cynicism, there's a lot of trust issues. So the integrity is important because, whatever happened in last few years, not everybody has heard or not everybody is the culprit, but, little, negative issues or news can undermine and, bring that kind of disrepute to the industry. So for carbon credits to be legitimate climate tool, transparency and traceability and environmental integrity must be reinforced through strong standards, verified MRV processes, and clear regulations. So that's why the integrity matters, and that can be brought in by the infusion of technology. Uh, so there are a lot of standards and industry responses. We'll not cover that. ICVCM, SBTI, which is guidelines to limit overuse of offset for net zero claim, VCMI, CBAM, and SEC. CBAM, as you know, is again graining because it's going to be there from 1st January 2026, and specifically for the countries who are exporting into Europe has to adhere to it and better wake up to the mandate or the requirement before it gets too late. So ICVCM purpose and scope importance, we have looked through it briefly. VCMI purpose and scope, we looked through it briefly, so I'll skip that. SBTI, Science-Based Target Initiative, it provides, if you look at the second para, the primary principle, carbon credits cannot be substituted for value chain, that is scope 1, 2, 3, emission reductions, okay? So that's what the SBTI primarily, so our permitted use is to only for beyond value chain mitigation, BVCM, as we had discussed in the initial slides. For example, contributing to a global climate action after a company has reduced its own emission in line with SBTI targets. So SBTI targets, and then it describes MVCM, right? And so, SBTI and carbon credits go hand in hand. And implication is that companies can use high integrity carbon credits to accelerate global decarbonization, but not to offset their way into SBTI compliance. So that's typically there was a science-based target, SBTI, GRI. There are various initiatives. One has to look at what initiative best fits and usage of blockchain and where we can make the difference. Carbon border mechanism, CBAM, as we would have heard, is European Union regulation to prevent carbon leakage and play a kind of provide a fair field for the local manufacturer in the European Union. They should not be at the disadvantage rather against the countries like India, China, Vietnam, etc., who has there is not a stringent decarbonization measures targets, and the exporter from these countries could be at advantage, and they not only continue to pollute but also provide the material or export the material into European Union, which has got a high on a carbon embodiment, right, from the excavation to the process it undergoes as a minute before the finished goods, and through the various depots, distribution and supply chain to the European Union, there could be a huge amount of carbon that it could be emitting and having the footprint as. So the European Union's CBAM, which some people say as the fallout of COP28, non-agreement, it could be a punitive measure or kind of anti-dumping. But then at the end, one has to look inward internally, and a manufacturer in the global south has to look at how they can reduce the carbon emission through their manufacturing process. So in the context of a blockchain, if you look at the point of relevance, blockchain tracked emission reduction, NFTs can serve as a proof of carbon production. So, apart from the registry or carbon credit, NFTs could well be used, and people are using it, and there are certain early successes, although it is still in infancy stages, but we'll look at it if the time permits. But now people are looking at how do we make it automated, Imagine, just like a ERP where you get from the SAP your production report or your material management, or your yield, or your profitability. What if the ERP system gives you your daily life cycle assessment? What if it gives you your carbon emission as on today? How are you doing in terms of your target versus actual achievement? And it comes through the system. I think that could be that may not be utopian dream, but that could be soon be a reality, because it's only the technology that can bring you to that level where you can have carbon emissions, your carbon footprint, your GHG calculations, all your measurement and parameters at the tip of the finger or the click of a button. And that's going to be a reality very soon in next 5 to 10 years. And we are taking baby steps towards that utopian dream, so to say. Okay, so what are the blockchain solutions that we are bringing in? Okay, so we talk about decentralized data management, immutable and transparent records. We talk about smart contracts and automated calculations. We talk about real-time data updates, holistic lifecycle analysis, enhanced adaptability or auditability, integration with IoT sensors. Now I stop here. Okay, so the blockchain is not going to operate in isolation. It has to be backed up by certain input data, right? So how's that structure? How's that architecture? We will we'll discuss in greater detail during the training program if at all you want to be there. But integration with the sensors and IoT devices is going to be the key in our journey towards infusing blockchain as a technology for measuring the carbon footprint. Then converting that into token and the carbon credits, improve the collaboration among the stakeholders, including the external parties. And then such kind of initiatives, the project is much quick to scale, much easier to copy the learnings and the institutionalize the knowledge, and thereby we can amplify the efforts across the value chain. So this is some small excerpt as to just by using a blockchain, if organizations are reporting, using SBTI as the reporting standards, then how blockchain can bring in that kind of benefit. For instance, on the left, you see there are various areas, BVCM tracking, beyond value chain, then MRP automation, monitoring, reporting, and verification, tokenized credits, immutable audit trails. So in each of these, blockchain plays an important role. In the middle block, we see blockchain benefits. For the BVCM, it records third-party mitigation because you're looking beyond the organizational boundaries and beyond scope 1 and 2. For scope 3, 4, you could look at blockchain as a disruptive or bring in that kind of benefit. And the relevance to it is that it helps companies disclose BVCM contributions, and which is irrefutable, immutable, and can be verifiable. So likewise, in each of the areas, BVCM, MRP, tokenized, immutable, on the SBTI itself, a carbon blockchain can make a huge impact and bring in a lot of benefit. But a caution here is that blockchain alone does not guarantee, compliance with SBTI. It must still meet SBTI quality standards, and value chain reduction must be prioritized. As such, SBTI doesn't really openly admit or prescribe that the carbon measurement based on the tokenization or the blockchain is accepted. It's not publicly accepted that under its various clauses and regulation. But this is one of the ways, and there are a lot of lobbying happening. There are a lot of activists, a lot of technical evangelists are actually pushing this kind of technology acceptation, adaptation, in the governments, in the regulatory bodies, in the exchanges, etc. So we are hoping that this will bring upon a change, and there'll be more acceptability or infusion of technology as we move towards in the near future, 2030, the NDCs, the carbon neutrality, the country's net zero target, etc. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Sir, we have session at 11, so we need to stop this session.
Okay. So yeah, so I'll quickly conclude this. Um, so do we have predicament on our mind? Do we have uncertainties about this technology and how it can bring about a change? Do we wait for the world to pass by, or do we adopt, or ride upon the bandwagon, get onto the bus before it's too late, before we miss the bus? So it is prescribed that you educate yourself and others about usage of various technologies to bring in that kind of credibility and expedite the process. Stay informed about greenwashing risk and true additionality of projects. Demand transparency and accountability, which is what every citizen should be doing. Support local and verified climate projects through the community-based and nature-based solutions backed up by the technology. Engage in public discourse and policies. Don't wait. Participate in climate consultations. Adopt and advocate on personal decarbonization. So the movement of the activity starts from I as an individual, and we should not look up to the world or the governments to bring about that change. The change starts from me, within me. And so there are a lot of activities that we can do as an individual. I'll share these slides with you. But how do we do this and kind of chain? But the hows are the domains of the universe, as the famous saying goes. So we use blockchain plus, we attach it to carbon assets, and there are a lot of early successes, as I mentioned. China, a major emitter, actively develop its national carbon market, and even they can buy carbon tokens, and against that people can the agencies can plant a tree, and those kind of democratization or the mass market movement has already happened in certain countries such as China. And yeah, so the benefits are transparency, security, efficiency, and boosted trust. So a lot of things there. I'll share this with you.
Thank you, sir, for taking the session. To learn more, we are organizing Carbon Blockchain Practitioners course in the month of August, from 15th of August. I'm sure there are a lot of insights that you'd like to share more. And also, what is the career opportunities post that? If you can tell us quickly, how can this add value to people's career?
Certainly, yeah. So I think all this while people from HR or environmental or hazard, or people who want to be part of the movement within the organization, we're looking up to certain tools and technologies that is really that can be a real game changer. Yeah, we were looking at the measurement standards and a lot of other things, but definite ones bring in the true value or the change are the GHG accounting, life cycle assessment, and the carbon credit using the technology as such. So if you're into this kind of field or game, I think you will be there in the future as well, because most of the other activities, reporting, ESGs and all will be automated, will be done by default within the systems, and it will become a way of life. So you will not need many practitioners there, because with the advancement of technologies, tools like machine learning, AI, and all, uh, the only jobs and career will be left is in the fields of LCA, GHG accounting, carbon credits, and measurement using technology. I think these are the way to go. So if you are an individual, you could look at this as a career path going ahead. If you're an organization, you could look at toying around with adopting this technology. And if you are a consultant, obviously you could blend in your knowledge of carbon credits, the practices, and the using as a technology for advisory services. So there could be a multitude of avenues, the opportunities open up with the with blockchain coming into foray. So for the LCA practitioner, GHG accounting auditors, and for the carbon credit and auditors, there's a huge opportunity blockchain provides as we move into the future. So I'll be happy to take your questions offline. I can share you my WhatsApp number or email with from IICSR, and we can talk more about it. Since what of time, I will cut it short and hand it back to Harsha.
Thank you so very much, Kishore. It has been lovely learning about this on a Sunday morning. We've shared your LinkedIn URL and we've shared our contact details. For any further information required, please feel free to reach us out, and we look forward to engaging with all of you all again. And thank you so much, Kishore, for the very insightful presentation.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.